Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar, TruMethods and Quoteworks. Today's topic is packaging and pricing strategies. My name is Gary Pica, the president of TruMethods, and I have the vice president of Quoteworks with me today, Brian Laufer. Hey Brian.
Hey, how you doing, Gary?
I'm doing awesome. I'm excited about doing a webinar together today.
Yeah, it's our first one together. This will be pretty fun.
Yeah, so it's good to have somebody else on who has been bumping around this industry for as long as I have. Right? You've been out there a while.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for 14 years with Quoteworks, and then before that, I was actually a VAR for about 3 to 4 years as well. So I've been around a while.
Well, good. This is important stuff we're going to talk about today, and you can share your experiences. You've seen a lot working with literally thousands of IT providers and MSPs, and so between the two of us, yeah, we've seen a few things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the first thing I want to open up by saying. We've got a lot to cover today, but everything we're going to talk about today, none of it is theory. All of this is in practice, both that I've used in my 2 MSPs that I have had, one I still have, as well as Brian's experience working with people over these past 14 years. So we want to make this all stuff, Brian, and no fluff.
Let's make it happen.
Okay, so today's topic is MSP, packaging, and pricing. And this is a topic, Brian, that, I've been talking about. It's changed, obviously, a lot. But since, 2009, I've been doing presentations. And I thought at some point that this topic would eventually lose interest. And it probably has more interest today. And I understand why, because there's new features and new things. You constantly have to change the way you approach this. Here's what I want to do. I want to kind of set the stage of why this is so important by talking about really what's happening with MSPs today. This is what an average MSP looks like. When it comes to adding recurring revenue, or MRR, monthly recurring revenue, they're inconsistent. They add a client, and maybe a month or two goes by before they add another one. Their prices they command, or I call it the all-in seat price. If you take the total monthly fee you charge someone divided by the total number of seats, is $100 on average per seat per month or less. Because of that, their leverage, or the amount of annual service revenue they generate based on total employees, is about $100,000. That makes their net profits, if they know how to calculate them correctly and they're giving themselves a salary, the actual profit at 10% or less, and obviously not creating jobs. Now look at the other end of the spectrum. And this is a term that I've coined, Brian, called WorldClass MSPs, to give my members an idea of what's possible. They're adding new recurring revenue at the right price every month. They're commanding prices that are 20 to 40% higher than average MSPs. They're generating 50% more service revenue with the same amount of employees, and margins that are 25 to 35%. This is a thriving company where everybody in that company is having opportunity that they can't get everywhere else. This kind of drives the point home. An average MSP with 12 employees generates about $1.2 million of just service revenue, whether it's recurring or non-recurring, excluding products. World-class MSPs, same 12 employees, 1.8. Brian, what's better, 1.8 or 1.2?
Well, since I do a little bit of math here in quoting, I definitely have to say the 1.8 with the world class.
Yeah, guess what? I ran both of these companies. Okay? Twice.
Wow.
Okay? And I know in our journey from zero in the first MSP, from 0 to 7,000 endpoints, we wouldn't have scaled to there at average MSP leverage and profitability. You just get stuck. And we say that there's 5 things to get you unstuck. We call them the 5 qualities of a world-class MSP: business planning process, sales focus, service delivery being process-driven, and command, understanding the key cost drivers. But number 2 is packaging and pricing. And mistakes made here, I have found, Brian, people don't realize they make them, and they are reducing or eliminating their chances of ever becoming world-class, and they don't even know it. And we want to give people, this is a big topic. I have probably 6 hours of content on this in my program, but we want to give people at least the core concepts where they can think about what they're doing and make some changes immediately. So if you sell recurring revenue, your packaging, your support offering is at the center of your business. It impacts your ability to sell new customers, the ability to deliver quality service, and your profitability as you grow your customer base. And I want to start by saying, really what you want to think about when you think about your offering is, how do you define your company way? So in my first MSP, Dynamic Digital Services, or DDS, we had the DDS way. It was our unique process of how we impacted every customer, and knowing that they would be better off with us, and finding ways of institutionalizing your knowledge. And the analogy I like to use is one of a grocery store and a bakery. So grocery stores, they all have the same ingredients, right? And you might like one store over another, but you're not going to pay $1.50 for a 99-cent can of beans, Brian, right? You're just not going to pay more. It's a commodity.
Exactly.
And it's the same from everybody. Where bakers, they also use all the same ingredients, but they're combining them to their unique recipe. And I don't know about you, Brian, but my wife makes me drive past 3 other bakeries to get to the one where she wants a specific cake, and she's not asking me whether it costs 25 or 30 bucks. Are you in the same boat?
Same way. She just wants the one that she wants.
Yeah, it's probably maybe the one that she's been eating since she was a kid. It's like the family bakery type of thing. And that's why they're lower volume, but they're higher margins business. They're unique. Although they all sell cake, they all have a different following. So I'm saying, which are you? Are you a reseller, where you're reselling all of these ingredients, or are you combining them into a unique company way that you can explain easily to people, in terms of being a bakery? And I will tell you, if you're experiencing some downward price pressure, if you're not selling the kind of prices we talked about and adding people on a monthly basis, you might be a reseller. You might be a grocery store. You have to take a look at that. And it starts with what you sell and how you sell it and who you sell it to. And that begins with your packaging and pricing. Man, think about, you said you've been doing this with Quoteworks since '93. Think about, and this could be another page, Brian, how this has changed, how many things you can include today.
Definitely.
Right? I mean, there wasn't much back in 1996 when I got into this business, but today it's a lot more complicated. And so one of the things I think, like, just a quick check on this stuff, right? Because there's no right or wrong answer what you should include or shouldn't include. You should include everything that you think you need to impact that client's results, right? And you shouldn't exclude anything that you know is the right thing for them to do. Here's a quick check that people can do. Look at your service offering right now. How much of what you're selling is what we call ingredients or everybody stuff? Support, antivirus, spam, monitoring, backup, all the stuff with your, RMM, your help desk. Everybody has help desk services, right? And cloud services. Brian, you and I see each other at a bunch of the industry shows. There's a bunch of new people who we've never, seen before with new cloud offerings, selling them to the channel.
They come up every show. I mean, you'll walk down the different aisles, and there's 5 new RMM tools. There's 2 more backups. It's crazy.
And so the point here is everybody has access to all the same stuff. So how much is really on that left-hand side, and how much of what you're selling in your offering is your recipe or your company way? That's your specific process, the way that you have people and roles set up, the best practices both internally and client-facing, and the discipline around those of how you do standardization and documentation, and a process around consulting around technology. So if you're more on that left side, normally what I find, Brian, all those things, your sales engines, you thought more people would buy, you can't command the prices you want, you find you get to certain places like, I call them impact zones. MSPs get between about 70 and 150,000 a month, and they get stuck, right?
Yeah.
I call that the place where MSPs go to die, because you can sell your way into the impact zone, but you can't just sell your way out. Like, the noise level becomes higher than the amount of people or revenue that you have. And I was just talking to a guy the other day. He runs good business. He's about $150,000 a month recurring revenue. but he's been there for 2.5 years, and he said he made more money when he was at $1 million of service revenue than he does at $2 million. And some of what we're going to talk about today, if people are experiencing that, we're going to talk about how you command more for your prices, how you include the right things in order to be able to impact it. Here's a typical managed service offering, really, if you really strip it away, that we see. People are out there selling support, because that's what we do. We're support companies. And they're also selling automation, so things that they're doing, you know, some cloud offerings or things. Everybody has an RMM today, and the things you can do with your RMM. And, of course, you're doing some consulting. I mean, if you're in this business, and you answer someone's questions, you're a consultant. But I don't know. Is this typical of what you see out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely when it comes to selling a service, selling the support, and then you know, it's that this is the typical managed service provider.
What I'm going to suggest, Brian, is that where the typical managed service offering ends is where yours need to begin. So beyond support, beyond those centralized services, which is a growing category, right, with hosted applications and hosted infrastructure and those kind of things, is that you need to specifically create some roles and package your recipe. And so we're going to go through each of these to explain them, but one is something that I call proactive network administration, where you're really developing your company way. And we're going to take you through in detail about what this is, what kind of standards, how to organize those standards, and how to be able to have them and package them in a way that will make this the reason why people can buy. And from that, you're going to pivot off that into true technology consulting that also has a process, and to the point where you have a stronger relationship with people, be able to provide a technology plan, a budget, and build a true business relationship, and be able to explain how you do this for your customers in a way that more people would want to buy from you, and price will not be an issue. Did you hear what I just said? Price won't be the main issue?
And the reason behind that is because you're actually selling the solution rather than an individual service.
Absolutely. So I was talking to Tim Fitzpatrick, our Director of Business Development here. He was with me for 12 years when we built the first MSP, and we were guessing that we probably together or apart have been on 1,500 sales calls and sold over $1 million of recurring revenue, right? Do you know, in almost every one of those things, two things were always the same. The people told us they were fine when we first got there, and they almost always then had to spend more with us than what they were spending to get better results. And we're going to show you how you are able to do that consistently. And that's really the mark of an MSP, of a world-class MSP. They're able to get a percentage of people who say they're fine to buy from them at the right price. So let's go through each of these one by one. Let's start with support. Quality support is really important, right? If you don't have it, you're going to lose customers. But all MSPs say they're good, right? I mean, the competitors doesn't say, well, listen, we're $500 less, but, you know, we have good support too. They're not going to go in there and say, listen, we're less, but to be honest with you, our support is so-so, right?
Right.
So you can try with SLAs, but for the most part, trying to say you can pick up a phone better than somebody else is a really tough way to go, right?
Definitely.
Same thing with centralized services. Everyone has some level of automation. Everyone has an RMM. They have a cloud feature. Everybody has access to the same tools and technology. It's assumed that you're good at this stuff, right? And again, to go in and say, listen, we can answer a phone better than someone else, and we can patch a computer better than your current vendor, you're with that kind of approach, and it sounds silly, but if you think about it, you might not be saying directly that, but underneath it, underlying it, is that really what you're asking them to believe? And I find, and again, I probably work with over 1,000 MSPs and business owners over the course of the year, and I find that a lot of times when you really strip it away, I mean, they believe in their experience and how long they've been doing it and their people, but from the prospects or the client's perspective, this is what it comes down to. Okay, so how do we change that? It starts with this concept of proactive network administration. And It's building your company way. This is the recipe where we develop technical standards and can do ongoing technical alignment with each of our customers. You know, when I do live events, Brian, one of the questions I ask people is, how many people here feel that their business and their customer business would be better off if they had a higher level of standardization across their client base? Do you know that every hand goes up? Everyone says yes. So my question is an obvious one. Well, why don't you? Right?
Right.
And the answer is because if you don't have a process and if you don't have a role, someone dedicated to it, you're going to be busy answering tickets, and there's never any extra time. Tickets keep coming, and they come every single day. That much we can count on. It's like the waves hitting the beach. You know the next wave is coming right behind. That's how tickets are. So think about all these areas. This could be 2 more pages too, but just from a high level, right? Think about all the areas where you need to have some standards, a way that you do things the same and keep things the same, more importantly, over time with every single customer. And underneath these, there's thousands, literally thousands of details that go into this. So the first thing you have to do is you have to come up with a way like a hierarchy. So one of the things we teach our members is to set them up into sections and categories and questions. So I'll give you an example so it makes sense. Here, the section is internal security, and the category is domain password policy. And you might have a number of questions under that. In this case, the sample is complex passwords. Really simple. Is Active Directory configured to use complex passwords? Yes or no? And you could, say here why you're asking. And in this way, if you think about it, maybe not one of these questions is so important, but if you have, like in my current MSP, we have about a dozen or more of these sections, and then underneath that, all told, we're asking on a regular basis well over 600 questions. So what happens is they end up representing all of your knowledge and experience, right? So your team, all your knowledge and experience has developed these, and now what you're able to do and explain to people how you do it with the process is that all of our clients are going to benefit from our knowledge and experience in the same way. Unless you have this level of detail, they will, your knowledge and experience will impact them, but not everyone in the same way. Does that make sense, Brian, what I'm trying to articulate here?
It definitely does. I mean, basically what you're doing is you're taking your experience over the years in your MSP or, in your business and basically cookie cutting it for each company. So that way you're not losing all of that knowledge every time or reinventing the wheel each time.
Yeah, and then so here's what we do. All of my customers in my current MSP as well as my former MSP that was acquired, we have a network admin assigned to every account. We, on a regular basis, depending upon what they spend with us, are doing these alignments we're going to talk about today. And we're scheduling them. We do them on site. And we schedule them a year in advance. So it might be once a quarter, it might be every other month, it might be once a month, again, depending upon what their recurring revenue is. And we're going out there and we're doing them in yes and no questions. So we're leaving no room for interpretation. Okay? So all your best minds develop the standards, but the person who does the alignment, they just have to understand the question and be able to answer it. So you don't need to have your top most expensive resources in this, but they got to be good people who are, customer oriented and understand the program. And here we're not even fixing things. We're just saying, is it in or is it out? Is Active Directory configured to use complex passwords? Yes or no? Is the maximum password age 180 days? Yes or no? So once this is completed, it's real simple of where they're in your standards and where they're out of your technical standards. Are you with me on this?
Perfect.
Okay. And ongoing is the key, not onboarding process. I mean, for example, a lot of times we get calls right in our MSP when someone's down. We go out, we get them back up, and maybe sometimes we have to go to their backup, and we always have to tell them that their backup isn't going to work exactly the way they thought it was, but it did work 6 months ago when it was installed and tested, right?
Right.
But since then, employees came and went, a server was upgraded, an application was upgraded, a lot of things. And all of this, security, everything is that way. It's the constant alignment over time that's the key, not just setting up a project right the first time. That's a big distinction with this. So now here's what we can do. Now we have this technology alignment. We know exactly where that customer is in and out. Now, when we do technology consulting, we can base it on that. I mean, everyone does consulting. You always hear this word, trusted advisor. Brian, do you have any advisors you don't trust?
I hope I don't.
Yeah, exactly. But, again, the same way we did with the net admin, where once we had the process in place, we didn't have to have, always A players doing it. These people here, the VCIOs or technology consultants, are the hardest people to find in your business because they have to have some business acumen. So when you get one, you want them to touch as much revenue as possible. In our model, they touch about $1 million or more of annual recurring revenue. And the way in which you do that is you put them in a position to be successful. On one side of it, they're given all this information where all they have to do, okay, is go through all the things that are out of alignment and determine what the business impact is going to be for those things. So they go through those same things. They see the engineering answer was no, and then based on that client, will it impact this particular client? For example, our complex passwords. If this is a flower shop, it might not be the biggest thing in the world, Brian. If it's a law office, that's a huge red bomb for them. They have huge exposure. So same technical answer, different business answer. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Okay. So now, again, you're putting this person in to get their information about the technology handed to them, and now they can use what they learn about that business in order to go ahead and eventually, and here's the key, to develop then, to be able to go to a client, we call this the client summary, technology summary, to have a 1 or 2 page report where you can say to a client, listen, we look at X amount of things over time. Of those, about 20 of them we found were out of alignment. Of those, there's 5 I want to talk to you today that probably you should make some business decisions on, okay? Now, I will tell you this. When I was my company's first VCIO in the beginning, I went out there with a stack of stuff. I mean, I had patch status reports, all the tickets we did. I couldn't get an owner or C-level to come back to a second meeting. I was shocked that they didn't care as much about patch management as I did. But once we went to this, where I said to him, look, here's 5 things that you need to make a business decision on. And one of them might be, look, you have this server. It's out of warranty. If it goes down, based on these things, the window to get it back up is probably at least 16 or more hours. Is that okay? They might say, yeah, it's a legacy server, it's fine. Or they might say, well, no, that's our line of, that's our Quoteworks server. It can't be down for more than, definitely not more than 8 business hours. So at that point, you say, listen, you can either change your expectations or change the technology. But at that point, they've assumed responsibility for it. If we don't have those kind of conversations and that goes down, whose fault is it, Brian?
That would be your fault at that point.
Yeah, everything's our fault, okay? So when we put a process in place to do this the same every time, I was able to get other people that weren't me to do this when I thought I never could. And 2, we got those owners and C-levels to continually come back because they felt these meetings were productive. And they were less about their technology and more about their business because we were presenting the issues in this succinct way. So guess what they did? 1, they stayed with us. 2, they were happy to pay more. And 3, they invested in technology, Brian. They bought more stuff from us.
That's the end goal. I mean, and that's where, the fact that you didn't make it overwhelming for them, you made them feel comfortable, and you were able to answer real-world problems for them. I mean, that's perfect.
And the question, I mentioned Timmy Fitz. He talks to a lot of our members now, but the question the two of us get the most is, how do you get a company to 7,000 endpoints? How do you get those kind of prices? How do you drive margins that are double or more the industry averages? And these two pieces here we're talking about alignment and strategy in a specific process with discipline, this is how we did it, Brian. This is the secret sauce. And right now, where there's more and more ingredients that are becoming more available and less expensive for every MSP to be able to offer, it's going to become more important. So I'm saying, look at this. Which is the right offering? The one that you're out there, and again, it might seem, you have to be honest with yourself, where you're really out there just telling people, and you can tell them, hey, we have more experience, we've been doing them, we have better people, and that all might be true. But having people easily be able to understand that is hard. Showing them a process and how it implements it. And so let me tell you what some of the other end of this is, Brian. We track something and have our members track something. That there's 20 smart numbers, and here's one of them that we have them look at that are key, cost and sales drivers. It's called tickets per month per endpoint. Okay, and on average, when members first come into our program, now that's all the tickets you get from your end users, as well as anything that comes to you from you create from your automation. They're between 1 and 2 tickets a month per endpoint. We set a target for our members to get to 0.5 by using this process. In my first MSP, we got as low as 0.2 tickets a month per endpoint.
Wow.
So now, when I'm in front of a prospect and he says, well, you're 4,000 a month, the other guys are 3,200. And I can say to them, well, listen, here's how this works. Here's the process that we use. Here's how we reduce your risk. Here's how we increase your functionality. Here's the process that we're investing in with that money. And by the way, you're spending, I'm asking you for $800 a month more. Your payroll's over $250,000 a month right now. And your people are being interrupted, right, their productivity, by an issue every 3 to 4 weeks. With my clients, it's every 3 to 4 months. If you knew your people would only have to deal with an issue every 3 to 4 months instead of every 3 to 4 weeks, would you invest a little bit more? Now, they don't always say yes. They usually don't say no, although that would be good to know. They usually say, I might. And that means they attach some value to that. And then you just show them some other ways this process is going to impact their business. And that's the reason why you're able to command higher prices. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So simple concept, but so powerful. All right, so let's do this. Let's talk about a couple rules around this, and then maybe we'll talk about pricing for a minute. So you're doing your support offering now with that as the backdrop of what we explained. Focus on the end result. I'm trying to lower their tickets per month per endpoint. I'm trying to reduce their risk and show that they have exposure today in every aspect, security, backup, all those things because of the lack of process. Whatever issue they tell me they're having, I'm telling them the issue's not the issue. It's a symptom of the issue, and it's a process issue that they have. Okay? So what is it? And then what do you want? What do you want to deliver to every client? And what's the right way? So what people, what process, what technology? I mean, if you think about that, Brian, would you give people a choice between whether they used your virus protection or not?
No.
Yeah, exactly, because they don't really want virus protection,
Exactly.
right? They just don't want viruses.
It's all about the solution.
Exactly. So that means you want to bundle as much as possible, right, into these things. And you want to tell them, even if it's going to cost them a little bit more. So define your edges. Make sure it's clear exactly what's included in your monthly fee and what's not. If you tell them, hey, it's unlimited remote support, for example, and then you say, but if it's a how-to question, but if it's a Mac, but if it takes more than an hour, then they're not really knowing what's included and what's not. And remember, the person calling you, the end user, they've never seen your agreement, Brian. And And now your person answering the phone doesn't know what's included and what's not. So I don't care whether you include it or don't include it, but pick one and make sure you have because fuzzy edges create risk and people won't buy and they won't invest more. Next, limit your choices and options. And I know Brian, there's different theories.
Right.
You and I discussed this. There's different theories about this, right?
Definitely.
Here's my theory. If what you're saying is, look, this is everything we want to include. Here's how much time we need to do our process, for alignment. Here's all the technology. Here's how we do these things. If you start offering, bronze, silver, gold, pure tin, and you're taking out some of the things that are what you believe are the right way to get them results, you almost can't have it both ways. Like, hey, this is the way. Invest a little bit more, but here's all the results, how we're going to impact your functionality and your productivity and your risk and your investment in capital. But if you don't like that, you can have my crappy silver program.
It's like, how effective do you want me to be for you?
Yeah, and the thing is, you need to tell them how this works, not the other way around, because all they're going to tell you is to just use the same nail and same hammer that the vendor that they're thinking about getting rid of is using, and that's not really fair to you, right?
Right.
So, limit choices and options. I'm not saying you have to have one offering, although most of my career I did. You could have it in any color you want as long as it was black. But if you do have one, more than one, if you have two offerings, make sure they both deliver the same end result, however you separate that. And try not to offer two to the prospect. Even if you have two, try to figure out what the right one is for them and just recommend that one. Because if they're choosing between 2 or 3 choices of yours and then they're looking at someone else and they have 2 or 3 choices, it becomes way too complex for them to understand how you're going to impact your business. Does that make sense?
It does, and when we had that conversation, a light bulb went off in my head when you explained it that way. It was perfect.
We got a lot more to cover, but I want to tell a quick story. So we had this one offering at Dynamic Digital Services. We called it our Connection Program. When we got acquired by Mindshift, they had another offering where they converted all your computers and put them into their Active Directory. It was a whole thing they had. And so they gave us that, and we said, oh, this is great. Now we have 2 offerings. All of a sudden, our whole sales process got out of kilter. Instead of going out there and just selling the value that we did for years successfully, we ended up spending all of our time telling them the difference between our 2 offerings. We made it more complex for them, more complex for us, and we lengthened our sales cycle. We weren't as effective, and so what we did was we said, listen, it's okay we have 2 offerings, but we got to figure out which one they need and only offer them that one, because we tied ourselves up like a pretzel. It's funny. Sometimes I see people's offerings. They have all these, bronze, silver, gold. Then they have with or without virus, with or without backup, with or without, cloud email. And, I say to them, you have all these offerings, which is the right one? Which is the one that allows you to do the best job for them? And they say, well, this one. I'm like, why do you have all the rest? Oh, because that's what people will buy. 9 times out of 10, they're not selling as much as they want when they tell me that. The theory's not working out.
Right.
So just let's sum this up, and then we'll talk a little bit about pricing. So good packaging should explain the reason why the prospect should buy from you, right? Make it easy for them to understand the end result. In other words, here's what you're experiencing, here's what my client's experiencing. And if you show them the difference between that, that's why they'll buy, and that's why they'll invest a little bit more. And trust me, they will invest a little bit more. If you show it to them in this way, they're not going to care about a couple $100 a month when they have other big costs that are impacted by this all over their business. Align your offering with your service delivery areas. So when I showed those 4 areas, those are 4 service delivery areas. So we have defined roles for support people, for centralized services, for net admin, for technology consulting or VCIO. You want to align your offering, your delivery, and your costs for those with how you deliver service and what you charge, right? So everyone has a defined role and responsibility, and your offering should look just like your service delivery. Are you with me on that?
I don't know how you can't be.
Yeah. Define roles and responsibilities. Boy, this is big. When I see someone who's struggling or gets stuck, normally I find out that everybody's doing everything. Someone's running the RMM, and then they're taking tickets, and then they're going out and doing a project, and then they're coming back, they're jumping back on the support board. And again, if you're small, it may mean that people do need to have two roles, but you should try to match up the roles, keep reactive roles together, and keep proactive roles together, and try to have people have as few roles as possible. And measure success, right? Based on what you're selling people, look at how you're impacting those customers. I mentioned one thing about tickets per month per endpoint that's tangible, and there's others. Measure that success of really how you're doing with impacting your customers. All right, you want to talk about pricing?
I think that's why everybody's here, right?
That's it. So, pretty simple. Number one, we want to keep it simple. So your pricing calculator should have as few questions to ask as possible. It's as simple as this. I have some members that they just ask you how many users you have, and they just charge a certain amount per user. In my MSP, we have only a couple. We ask how many servers, physical or virtual, how many desktops. We have a price for each so that someone who had more complex environment might have a little higher seat price. And you want to use this concept of all-in seat price, or ASP, as your guide. So however you do your pricing calculator, for your average client, when it's done, let's say it's $2,000 a month. Divide that by the number of users. Let's say it's 20. That means your all-in seat price is 100, okay? So that way, you can balance that against what your cost per seat is, so you know your margins, and you can also balance it against industry standards. So it's just a way, it's not necessarily a pricing strategy, but it is a metric that's really key to know where you are. The next thing is project the model. Take the kind of customer you're targeting and the pricing you're thinking about for your offering, and then imagine you had 10, 20, 30, 50 or more of those customers. What would your organization look like? How many people would be in each of those delivery areas? What would your leverage be, your margins? How many tickets would get created? So really try to project out to make sure that sometimes when you look at things at one customer, it makes sense. But when you think about having all of those, you find glitches in that model you wouldn't have seen otherwise. And finally, Brian, your price is not too high. Your value might be too low, okay?
Right.
But your price is not too high. Another quick story. So I was talking about pricing. Well, here, let me do this. Let me go on to the next page and actually show the pricing, and then remind me I'm going to tell a quick story that kind of brings all this whole thing we're talking about together. Okay, let me give you a couple examples here of the impact of pricing. Here's two companies, two MSPs, both with an average customer of 20 seats on average, and they both manage 50 clients. The first one, the right customer's at the right price. His average all-in seat price is $120 a seat. So his average client's worth $2,400, 1,000 seats, $120,000 a month. The bottom MSP, $75. So they have the same 1,000 seats, but they're generating $75,000 a month, not $120, okay? And guess what? That bottom MSP, they're dealing with more tickets. Their costs are higher because they can't afford to do the things we talked about being proactive and lowering those tickets per month per endpoint. So they're collecting less revenue, and they have lower margins on that revenue, obviously, and higher noise. This is what we see, Brian. And so I was doing a live presentation a number of years back. I happened to be right here in the Philadelphia area where I built my two MSPs and coach a bunch more. And when I got to the pricing part, immediately the hands go up. And the guy says to me, listen, Gar, I hear what you're saying. It all sounds great, but I charge less than what you're suggesting. And my customers are already complaining that my price is too high. I'm as much or more than my competitors. We could never charge those kind of prices. And I said, well, where are you located? And he told me his office was literally less than 7 miles as the crow flies from my MSP, where we were bringing on 3 to 4 new customers at this price, right, every single month and had 160 companies that were paying those bills. And you say to yourself, how is it that a smart business guy, and I talked to him, he was a smart guy, he took care of his customers and employees, is telling me that something can't be done that a few miles away we're doing on a daily basis? And the answer is, when I really dug into it, we're not in the same business. He is in the ingredients business, which is getting more competitive. I'm in the chocolate cake business, which is booming. So when I tell you that our top members, their all-in seat price for their average bundle, okay, for these things, and again, it depends on what you include in it. We give people some math to figure it out exactly so you can figure out your per seat costs. So that will vary, but they're 120 to 140. If they have cloud features in it, cloud desktop, it's even higher than that, Brian. And then we see average people that are 100 or less. That's how wide the variance is. And here's the kicker. The people on the upper end of the pricing are the ones that are selling the most recurring revenue most consistently. Do you see how that all ties together? Because it's based on value, not based on the price.
Exactly. Definitely.
So what I'm telling you is, you want to change the game. I like to say, if the way we changed the game with the value proposition we talked about today, if we were playing blackjack, we would get thrown out for counting cards. Because we tipped the scale in our favor. It wasn't a fair fight between us and other people that competed against us at any price. And this is really what it comes down to, man. Leverage. This is the relationship in your business between an hour worked and a dollar billed. You're trying to generate more revenue with the fewest amount of employees. That's good for you if you're an owner. It's also good for every employee because they're in a more thriving business. So let's drive this home. An average MSP with 6 employees has about $600,000 a month of annual service revenue. Again, that's all service revenue, recurring or non-recurring, just no product, which means they generate about $100,000 of annual service revenue per total employee, not per tech, because you got to pay everybody. We set a target of 150. Same 6 employees with $900,000 of service revenue. That average MSP has $300,000 of unrealized profitability locked up in their business. So here's what I want everybody to do, Brian. Really easy. Take your total number of employees, including you if you work in the business, multiply it by 150,000. Subtract from that what your actual annual service revenue will be this year. That number is your unrealized profitability that's in your business. So you want higher margins, but you drive leverage. It starts with having the right offering at the right price, making sure your average seat price is right, the average size of a customer, average MRR. If they're only spending on average $1,200 with you, you're never going to be as profitable as if they spend $2,000, or more. Every client creates some level of noise, and then you just start to align your costs with your revenue. So your offering is broken up into those blocks we showed you, and then they're the same as the delivery areas, and you know the relationship between each delivery area and your revenue, and you know your cost drivers. This is how you increase margins, is by driving leverage, because we run our business with people, so we want to equate everything back to what we offer with our people. So finally, you're probably going to need, when you do this work, you're probably going to need to build a sales engine, because in order to get that unrealized profitability, almost every single person who comes to TruMethods, part of the answer is they need new customers at the right price. So start by setting a goal for new recurring revenue. Build a playbook. Know what activities. Like, determine how many people do I have to be in front of? What's my average deal size? What's my close ratio? How many leads do I need? And how am I going to get them? Is it realistic based on where I am? Dedicate some resource or resources whose only job is to add new recurring revenue, and put some accountability in place. If you're not having a sales meeting every week, even if it's just you, and when I started my business, I was the only one at my sales meeting, and believe me, Brian, some of them got ugly.
That's funny.
Yeah, I had to square myself up a few times, okay? But this is what it's about. Adding new customers every month is the lifeblood, and if you're doing the process we talked about, you're also going to be driving more services to your base. I was telling you, Brian, that we measure this and say that for every dollar of recurring revenue, if you're not generating 20 to 40 cents on the dollar of non-recurring services plus hardware, your clients aren't engaged. They're not investing in technology. So if you do $100,000 a month of recurring revenue, you should have $25,000 plus dollars of service revenue doing projects and upgrades to that base. At my MSP currently, we have about $130,000 a month. It took us 10 quarters, right, to get there. We have all new customers and all new employees in 10 quarters. And we generate over $40,000 a month of non-recurring services from that base using the process. So that's a gauge. And so that kind of leads us a little bit into Quoteworks and how you can impact that. And I want to start off by saying, I'll let you talk about this, Brian, but I want to start off by saying I have a lot of experience with Quoteworks because I bought it really early on in my first MSP, and I use it. We use it today. They use it in our current MSP, and it's been an important part of this process and making us efficient of how we do this.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about Quoteworks itself, and then I'll get into how we make you more efficient. Like we said earlier, Quoteworks was founded in 1993, so we've been around. This is our 21st year. I've been with the company now for 14 years, and we continually evolve the product. And we say that we know who you are because we were you. We were in your shoes. We were doing your job. So when we're out there talking to you, we understand what your needs are. So when we come back to the office, we're writing the functionality and the solutions that you need to succeed. And the keys to our success are, our integrations, whether it be to CRM or PSA applications, to accounting solutions, or to distributors. We make it so everything is tied together. One of our customers called us the glue that keeps everything together for them, and I really like that analogy. And we're affordable, too. I mean, Quoteworks itself, it can be a one-time purchase of just $249. I don't usually like to talk about money, but when you're talking about a solution that runs your entire business, at least on the sales side, at only $249 one-time purchase, that really is a key to our success. And then, we're talking a lot about support. With Quoteworks, you can pick up the phone, give us a call, and speak to a live tech. You're not having to create a ticket and wait for somebody, to get back to you. You're not wondering what's going on. We're available for voice support, and our support is based here in the U.S. Quoteworks is a hybrid cloud solution. So by that, Quoteworks does have an on-premise piece, but we're also in the cloud as well with Quote Ballet. So, you can do mobile quoting. You know what your salespeople are doing. And if we're to have this webinar in November, you'd see a lot more with Quoteworks in the cloud itself. And when we talk about Quoteworks being a software company versus a services company, basically what we're talking about there is that Quoteworks itself, we make our revenue off of selling you our solution. We don't make money off of actually selling you services. So when we give you a quote for $700 or whatnot for Quoteworks itself based on the licenses, you're not going to have another $2,000, $3,000 worth of hidden fees. What you see is what you get with us. So what we do is we make sure that we're providing you a solution that you need at a price that you can afford. And the reason we can do that is because we're in over 101 countries, and we have over 70,000 users of our software. And because of all of that, we truly are the market-leading sales, quoting, and proposal solution. So let's talk a little bit about streamlining your quoting and purchasing process. When people think of Quoteworks, they're only thinking of us on the sales side. But really, we're in all facets of the business. And with that, what we do is, we make it very easy to track revisions. So, if you're using like Word or Excel right now to do your quotes, you have no database. So you have no way to keep track of, okay, so what worked in the past? What did I quote the person, 6 months ago versus what am I going to quote them today? What was my revision process? I mean, you may have to go back and negotiate a little bit in your quoting or proposal process, and they may want to change their minds. So we make it very easy to do that. And then, obviously with this conversation, we're going to make it so it's very easy to track your recurring revenue. And whether that recurring revenue is coming from your PSA, whether it be ConnectWise or AutoTask or some other solution, we're going to make it very easy to track, what your revenue is going to be forecasted for the current month versus, what your contract life, whether it be 12 months or 36 months. So we make sure that you're leveraging what you already have so you don't have to maintain multiple databases. So that way your pricing is always accurate. And we make it very easy to bundle all of that together and provide a solution-oriented quote or proposal as opposed to, we're offering you virus protection, we're offering you, BDR. You're going to have all of that when it comes to the purchasing side, but when you present it to the customer, they're just going to see the solution that you're providing them. And when it comes to the hardware side of things, we make it very easy to see all of your distributors on one screen with your pricing availability. We extend that out as well because, it's great to know, what Tech Data and Ingram might be pricing something out at, but we also make it so you can see consumer sites like Amazon, Newegg, CDW, Provantage, even Staples, all in one screen. So you can see what your customers are going to see as well, so you can kind of keep, within a certain price range there. And then, we didn't really get to talking too much about pricing the entire solution, but we make it very easy to present either a monthly or a one-time purchase option, whether it be, quoting HOS, quoting lease options, but we make it so that the customer can select either one of the options that fits within their budget as well. And then once the customer accepts the quote, we make it easy to place your orders electronically with distribution. And what's key here, too, is you may have originally sourced the item from Tech Data or Ingram, but a lot happens in the 2 or 3 weeks that it takes to close that sale. So we make it very easy to switch which vendor or distributor you're purchasing from and then bundle them all together into one order. So you can take the 5 orders that you've won today and place that single order with Tech Data, so you're getting your free shipping minimums. And then you're going to be able to track all of that all the way through. And because you are using QuoteWorks, every time you save the quote or the proposal, your CRM pipeline is always up to date. We're always updating that opportunity with the current information. I know when it comes to managing a sales team, it might be really, it's hard enough to get them to just create the opportunity, but if you're going through any sort of revision process, it can be like pulling teeth to get them to update that opportunity. And that's why QuoteWorks, we do that for you and for your sales team, so that way they don't have to remember to do that. Now, from an intelligence standpoint, from a sales intelligence standpoint, we make it easy to know when your customers are viewing their quotes. If you do give them options, whether just a few small options on the quote, every time they're viewing it, every time they're making those changes. So, like, if they view the quote 5 times in a day, to pick up the phone, give them a call, and say, hey, how's it going? Or, likewise, if you sent the customer a quote a week ago, they haven't looked at it yet, pick up the phone, talk to them, see what's going on. So that way you truly know how to gauge where things are going in your sales process. And then to help close those sales, we make it easy to capture electronic signatures and payments. So you don't need to worry about having, the game that happens where, the customer needs to sign, fax it back to you, or scan it. You can capture those sales right away. I can't tell you how many times that, I walk into the office and I see, a quote was accepted at 10 p.m. So that way things can happen outside of normal business hours as well. So with all of that, I know I went through a bunch of features. At QuoteWorks itself, we are constantly evolving, and this year alone, we're probably going to have somewhere around 600 new features. So I didn't want to bore you with too much there, but I did want to say, if you mention this webinar, when you talk to anyone on our sales team, you will save 10% on any license purchase, as long as it's purchased by August 22nd. So now's a great time if you've been looking at QuoteWorks, or if you're a current QuoteWorks user and you're looking at adding more licenses, now's a great time. So,
all right, so that's sales@quoteworks.com. That's QuoteWorks, W-E-R-K-S. And so I want to try to finish up with a couple. I want to kind of summarize things today for people, but I'll just mention 2 things about QuoteWorks. One, really important, we're able, look, we want our VCIOs to touch as much revenue as possible. One way to do that is we hand them the information to analyze from the net admins. The other way is we can't have them spending all their time doing quotes. So, and if you don't have a system that captures all this, you end up having your most expensive people, okay? Owners, project techs, and VCIOs doing quotes. In my MSPs, we have someone who's basically, more clerical in nature. and detail-oriented, because once they get a little help on some of those quotes, they're about 75% the same every time, and we're comparing them against what was actual. So it's really important stuff, right? So look, let's talk about, I want to tell people about TruMethods, but let's talk about the 3 top mistakes that I see people making. 1, you may not realize it or be honest with yourself, but you're selling ingredients really chocolate cake, again, if you're honest with yourself. Next, you have too many choices and options, okay? You need to be the expert and tell people what they need and what they need to invest. Because, Brian, customers think they have more control over IT spend than they do. They think they can save money by spending $2,000 with a vendor instead of $3,000. They think they're saving $1,000, when in most cases they're not saving $1,000. They're losing way more because there's not enough time and effort based on the leverage of that company to do the things we talked about today that are going to truly reduce their noise, their risk, increase their functionality, all the big costs in their business. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs in their business, even a small business, every month, and we're talking about a few $1,000s a month. So don't have too many choices and options. That's a symptom of your logic and your belief system of how you help people. And the last thing is, your price is not too low. Don't ask your clients and don't ask your employees about price. I'll save you the time, what they're going to say, okay? So 3 things, if you do nothing else but raise your prices and add some more value, we have been successful today. So we have some questions here we want to take, but let me just real quick tell you about why TruMethods. We're a proven business transformation platform. We help you align your service offering, consistently build recurring revenue at the right price, dramatically increase your leverage and margins. And again, people come to us when they're ready to achieve a level of financial independence. Here's how we do it. 1 is, we call it our starter kit. It's our onboarding process. It's an 8-week onboarding process where you'll have you'll watch webinars and have homework to do, and you have 4 scheduled one-on-one calls with one of our onboarding folks that'll keep you on track. At the end of it, you'll have aligned your packaging and pricing with world-class standards. You'll have a sales plan, a lead generation plan, a business plan. You'll have a quarterly action plan. You'll have calibrated your current numbers against TruMethods smart numbers. And you'll have a plan to increase not just sales, but efficiency. And most importantly, you will have higher expectations about what's possible. Then ongoing, our monthly program, we do 2 live webinars a month. And on our portal, we have over 90 hours of stuff we've recorded over the past 5 years that's role-based. Sales content, operational, service delivery, smart numbers, business planning, every aspect of the business. And we have something called Ask TruMethods, where anywhere on the portal you can click a button and you can ask me and my team questions directly through the forum. And I also send out 3 times a week weekly motivational audio messages. So really everything you need from a business planning discipline, sales process, support, motivation to get from where you are to where you want to be. Normally, our normal price, if you go to our website, is $22.95 for that startup kit and onboarding process, and then $3.99 a month for Growth Tracks, the ongoing program. So today, for a limited number of people on here, because we have a lot of people on, we're waiving the upfront and we're lowering the monthly to $3.49. So here's what it is. You put your credit card in, $3.49 a month, you get everything. You get the onboarding process, and we are month to month, Brian, so we don't have any term agreement. The hundreds and hundreds, over 500 companies around the world that are nice enough to allow us to hit their credit card every month, they all do it because they think they're better with us than without us. We take all the risk in this thing. So, and I have people that have been with me since we launched in 2009 that have been with us that entire time. So if you want to grow sales and profitability, give us a try, okay? The first 10 attendees who email gary.promo@trumethods.com, that's TRU methods, no E in true, with the subject line, sign me up, will get an email with the promo code and instructions. You just need to use it over the next few days, because if you're not going to use it, we'll probably get more requests than we will have promo codes. So as I like to say, Brian, change your business and change your life. So if we have some more questions, we have a couple, we're almost top of the hour, but a couple things. Someone here asked a question. They said their all-in seat price is very low. They're in another country, and So what I want to say to them is, look, based on where you are, you have to understand the currency exchange, and it might not be, your goal might not be to get from that low price. Maybe you just want to get a little higher, but we're still going to teach you to know what your per seat cost is, so you may be able, your cost may be lower, and you may be able to charge less in your marketplace if your labor costs are dramatically lower, okay? Then the last question we get, Brian, is, I get it, all this stuff, it's quoting, it's packaging, it's a lot. Like, where do I start, right? Where do I start? And the best advice I could give you is this. It starts with a plan. It starts with deciding. We use a simple process, Brian, to take people through this. Where do you want to be 3 years from now? Where do you want to be 12 months? And then what are the few things, just the one most important thing every quarter you need to focus on? Because we're all busy in small businesses, Brian. You and I run small businesses, okay? And we're always trying to put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound sack. But and the more you sell, the busier you are. So having the discipline to know, okay, no matter what happens, what's the one most important thing? You know, I'm gonna complete my packaging and pricing this quarter. I'm gonna change it and get out there. I'm gonna dedicate a resource to sales this quarter. That's the most important thing. I'm gonna build that net admin process that Gary's talking about, and we're really going to change our culture, and we're really going to change the results we deliver, and we're going to get our first 3 best practices done this quarter, and we're going to get them out to our top 10 clients. A really specific thing. And if you do that, it's amazing. Like I said, you know, we went from 0 to 7,000 endpoints in the first MSP. The new one, I don't work in it. I get a 30-year-old kid who runs it, and this is what we've done, again, to totally, I call it a frame-off restoration. All new customers, all new employees, all new process, using what we talked about today, and all we did was just the most important thing, and we let each quarter go by one. So, hey, Brian, this was great, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This is some great educational content.
Awesome. So, again, if you're interested, gary.promo@trumethods.com, sales at Quoteworks. And again, you mentioned this webinar, you get an extra 10% off. So I'm a huge fan of making more money, and I'm a huge fan of Quoteworks. So check it out, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, make it a great day.